What's going on, guys? Ethan here, coming at you with my 1/400 scale model of YVR Vancouver International Airport. Just before we get started and go through the lineup here, I'll point out a couple of disclaimers. This airport is built off the Gemini Jet's 1/400 scale terminal and 1/400 scale expansion map. Now, I've added some real-time satellite imagery onto those maps, but you'll notice some detail inconsistencies. For example, if you crack open your flight supplement, you'll notice that Vancouver actually has a runway 26, while this Cathay Pacific 777-300ER is landing on a runway 27. So there's a couple little things like that, but as we see them, I'll point them out on the way. But let's dive right into it. So starting off, landing on the runway here, we have a flaps down Cathay Pacific 777-300ER. This guy's just arriving from Hong Kong. I really like that new Cathay Pacific livery. If we go over to the taxiway here, we have an ANA Star Alliance 787-9. This guy is just getting ready to head out to Tokyo, Haneda. Moving on down the lineup here, we have another Star Alliance departure, the Air Canada A330-300. This guy is just taxiing down the runway and is going to be heading out to Montreal. You can tell by the black engines of that Star Alliance A330 that this is in fact the new Air Canada livery. Previously, the Star Alliance livery on the A330 had just simple white engines. You can also tell we've got the black winglets on the A330. But let's keep moving down here. And we have the JAL 787-800. This route used to be serviced by a 763, but has since moved over to the 787-8. This guy has the UNICEF sticker on the very back of it. I really like the JAL 787 livery, specifically because it has really cool little black stripes on the wings. It's almost reminiscent of like a 777-300 or something like that. I think it's really neat. And beside him, you might have noticed, we have a Fantasy Wings co-bus. This guy, I'll zoom in a little more. I really like the detail on the co-bus. I think that Fantasy Wings did a really good job. This is specifically the eco-bus. I guess it's the electric version, which is exactly what we would see here at Vancouver International. And if we keep moving down the departures here, we have some more Air Canada departures getting ready to head out here. We've got specifically this Air Canada 787-9. This guy is just arriving from Osaka, Japan, and has its flaps down. It's going to have to raise those before heading over to the gate here on the international terminal. Behind him, we have an Air Canada 787-9. This is in the Wish livery, and this is Charlie Foxtrot Victor Lima X-Ray. This 787-9 has just arrived from Ottawa. Moving on from that Air Canada 789, we have a JetBlue A321neo. This JetBlue A321neo is going to be heading out to New York John F. Kennedy. JetBlue currently serves two routes into YVR. We have the JFK route, as you see right here, but we also have a seasonal route out to Boston Logan. Behind that JetBlue A321neo, we have a newcomer to YVR, an Edelweiss A350-900. This Edelweiss A350-900 is going to be getting ready to head out to Zurich today. Beautiful aircraft. Really excited to see the A350 on this route into YVR. Edelweiss has been a staple European flag carrier for YVR for some time now. I'll admit I'm gonna miss those A340s, but it's really nice to see another A350 service coming into YVR. And we'll move over to some of our other carriers back here. Moving over to the Air Canada Cargo 767-300. This Air Canada Cargo 767-300 is going to be filled up with cargo and heading over to Toronto Pearson later today. And behind him, we have a Lufthansa A350-900 in the inverted Clean Tech Flyer livery. This Lufthansa A350-900 is going to be loading up with passengers and heading over to Munich today. Over at our domestic gates here, we have an Air Canada CRJ 900. This guy's just going to be loading up with passengers and heading over to Saskatoon. And behind him, we have an Air Canada Q400-8. This Air Canada Q400-8 is just going to be loading up with passengers and heading over to Smithers today. If we move over to the other side here, we have another CRJ 900. This Air Canada CRJ 900 has just arrived from Seattle and is going to be holding on the stand here at the domestic terminal for a flight out to Winnipeg later today. Beside him, we have another Air Canada CRJ 900. This Air Canada CRJ 900 is just loading up with passengers for the trek up north to Yellowknife. And we'll head over to the A319. This Air Canada A319 is just loading up with some catering and is going to be running a charter flight to Montreal. Just beside our Air Canada A319, we have an Air Canada A321. This Air Canada A321 is just filling up with passengers and is going to be heading out to Toronto in about 30 minutes here. We have a 4 times daily A321 mainline service that goes from Vancouver to Toronto every day. So we have lots of A321s at Vancouver International. This A321 is one of the 4 that will be departing later today. We have another A321 beside it. We have an Air Canada A321 with the Sharklets, the slightly newer A321 that was delivered to Air Canada from YVR last year. It's going to be heading out to Calgary today, and it's definitely a reminder we're about to see those A321 LRs arrive in Vancouver pretty soon. Beside that A321, we have another A321. This guy's just sitting at the gate and is going to be heading out to Toronto in 2 hours. And then we have another A321. This Air Canada A321 has just arrived from Toronto and is offloading passengers right now. Beside our A321, we have an Air Canada 737 MAX 8. This Air Canada 737 MAX 8 is just loading up with passengers for a flight off to Halifax today. Beside him, we have another Air Canada 737 MAX 8. This Air Canada 737 MAX 8 is just loading up with passengers for a flight off to Quebec City. And just arriving from Montreal, we have an Air Canada A220. This Air Canada A220 is just filling up with some fuel and has just arrived from Montreal. During the Air Canada Investors Conference in 2025 here, we heard that the Air Canada Rouge fleet was going to grow as Air Canada transfers a couple of their 737 MAX aircraft over to Air Canada Rouge. So it'll be interesting to see that happen. I'm excited to see the 737 MAX 8 in the Rouge livery, and we'll see what goes on from there. But we'll move over from the domestic terminal here to the narrow-body gates at Terminal 2, which is our international terminal. We have 2 Air Canada narrow-body aircraft here today. We have the Air Canada 737 MAX 8. This guy's just filling up with some cargo and is going to be heading out to Houston. And beside him, we have an Air Canada A220. This Air Canada A220 at our HSBC gate here is just getting ready to get pushed back for a flight to Denver. Okay, let's move along to some of the other T3 gates here, which are along the other side of the airport behind those trees. But before we move over to those Terminal 3 gates, we have a couple narrow bodies on the taxiway here. We have one interesting looking Air Canada, Trans-Canada Airlines A220. This Trans-Canada Airlines A220 is just getting ready to hop on a ferry flight over to Toronto Pearson. This guy was out of commission for a little while there, but has had its engine issues fixed and is now back in service. Very cool livery. Big fan of the Trans-Canada Airlines livery on a DC-3 and on an A220. Previously, it was also on the A319, which looked really cool as well. Behind him, we have this oddity for Vancouver International Airport. We have an Alaska 737-900ER. This guy does occasionally serve this route from Vancouver to Seattle, and we actually saw it last week in the One World library. But today, the Alaska 737-900ER is going to be heading down on a quick hop to Seattle-Tacoma. Behind our 737-900ER, we have a Porter E195E2. This Porter E195E2 is just heading out to Toronto. Very interesting livery, and really cool to see Porter service Vancouver now. We have our Air Canada Jets A320. This Air Canada Jets A320 is going to be headed over to Chicago today. Down to those WestJet gates here, we have a WestJet 737-800. This next generation 737 is going to be headed down to Los Angeles today. Behind him, we have a WestJet Q400-8. This WestJet Q400-8 is just getting ready to head out on the hop up to Kelowna. Beside him, we have another WestJet Q400-8. This WestJet Q400-8 is just loading up with passengers for a flight over to Victoria. Beside him, we have another WestJet Q400-8. This WestJet Q400-8 is just getting ready to load up with passengers and head over to Nanaimo. Beside that WestJet Q400-8, you'll notice we have two SAB 340s, a WestJet SAB 340 and a Continental Connection SAB 340. The Continental Connection SAB 340 is currently operated by Pacific Coastal, and the WestJet SAB 340 is now in a hybrid livery with Pacific Coastal. So I've included both of them at this airport. The WestJet hybrid Pacific Coastal SAB 340 is going to be heading over to Penticton today, and the Continental Connection SAB 340 operated by Pacific Coastal is going to be headed up to Masset today over in Haida Gwaii. So let's jump into some of our other WestJet 737s down here. Starting off with our WestJet 737-700 in the box titles. We have the WestJet 737-700 in the box titles. He's just arriving from Calgary here. Moving on down the line, we have another WestJet 737-700. This is in the Maple Leaf titles. This WestJet 737-700 has just arrived from Edmonton, Alberta. And beside him, we have another WestJet 737 next generation, but this is the WestJet 737-800 in the new livery. This WestJet 737-800 in the new livery is just arriving today from Los Angeles. Beside him, we have a WestJet 737 MAX 8. This WestJet 737 MAX 8 is just arriving from Phoenix, Arizona. Beside him, we have a WestJet 737-800. This WestJet 737-800 is just loading up with passengers and is going to get pushed back to Toronto Pearson today. Beside him, we have a WestJet 737-700 in the new livery. This WestJet 737-700 in the new livery has just arrived from Winnipeg and is going to be at the stand tonight. Beside him, we have a Flair 737 MAX 8. This Flair 737 MAX 8 has just arrived from Edmonton. On the taxiway here, we have the WestJet 737-800 in the 100th Boeing 737 Next Generation titles. Those of you who are paying really close attention will recognize this is Charlie Golf Alpha Whiskey Sierra, and Charlie Golf Alpha Whiskey Sierra has been repainted into the new WestJet titles. That being said, this aircraft I purchased on consignment. It used to be at the Vancouver International Domestic Departures gates in the hallway on the way to the actual gates, and it was there for a really long time. In fact, if you look up on YouTube, you can see videos of the incredible 1/400 scale display that used to be on display at Vancouver International Airport. So when those models went on consignment, I picked up this WestJet 737-800, and I gotta have it run a domestic route. So today this guy will be heading over to Winnipeg, Manitoba. Behind him, we have a Flair 737-8 MAX. This 738 MAX is going to be going to Edmonton, Alberta. Behind him, we have a WestJet 737-800. This is Charlie Foxtrot Kilo Whiskey Juliet. This guy is going to be headed over to Atlanta today. And behind him, we have a KLM 777-300ER. This guy has just arrived from Amsterdam Schiphol and is going to be heading over to the stand. On the other side of the stand here, we have a really interesting addition to the airport. We have the original Q100-8. This guy is going to be operated by Central Mountain Air and head over to Quesnel today. Beside him at the stand, we have an Aeroflyer KF Aerospace 737-600. This guy's going to be headed over to Kelowna later today. Behind him, we have a formerly Sunwing, currently WestJet 737-800. This guy's on the stand but arrived earlier today from Toronto. Behind him, we have another interesting international 777-300ER. the Air China 777-300ER. This guy has just arrived from Beijing Capital and is going to be heading out there tomorrow. Until then, he's just going to hang out here on the stand. Beside that 777-300ER, we have another 777-300ER. We have the China Airlines 777-300ER, and he's just arrived today from Taipei. We'll move over to the de-icing stand over here. At the de-icing stand, we've got a couple of international wide bodies. Starting off on this side, we have the Fiji Airways A350-900. This Fiji Airways A350-900 has just arrived from Nadi. Currently, Fiji Airways operates an A330 and an A350 on this route. Beside him, or across from him, I should say, we have the Air Tahiti Nui 787-9. Moving over here to the de-icing ramp, we have the Fiji Airways A350-900. This guy has just arrived here today from Nadi. This route also operates on an A330, but we also get the A350. It's interchangeable, really, and I really like the A350. So we'll just have him over at the stand here, the de-icing stand. And in front of him, we have the Air Tahiti Nui 787-9. This guy has just arrived from Papayette and is going to be heading over to Paris Charles de Gaulle later today. Beside him, we have a Szechuan A350-900. This guy has just arrived from Chengdu and is going to be heading back to Chengdu later tomorrow. And beside him, we have the IHG Hainan 787-9. He's just arrived from Shenzhen and is going to be heading back over to Shenzhen. Behind him, we have the EVA Air 787-10. This guy is going to be heading over to Taipei later and has arrived from Taipei. This route is actually currently operated on a 777-300ER. However, for a long time, we also had the 787-10. This was actually the first 787-10 to ever begin service to YVR Airport. Okay, let's move over to the taxiway here. We have an Air Canada 787-8. This guy's going to be heading over to Toronto today in the new livery. And we have another Air Canada new livery, 787-9. This guy is going to be headed over to Ottawa. All right, let's keep going on some of the other terminals here. Moving over past the fire station and the beacon here, we have an Air Canada 787-8 in the toothpaste colors. This guy is just getting ready to hook up with the jet bridge and has just arrived from Toronto. Beside him, we have an Air Canada 787-9 that is inbound today from Beijing, but is going to be heading out on a domestic route later today. And beside him, we have an Air Canada 777-300ER in the toothpaste colors. This guy is inbound from London Heathrow and is going to be headed out on a domestic route later today. Beside him, we have an Air Canada A330-300ER. This guy has just arrived from Montreal. And we'll start to move over to some of the Terminal 2 international departures. Moving past our Air Canada toothpaste A330, we have our Alaska E175 in the Honoring Those Who Serve livery, and this is our seasonal flight down to Portland. Beside him, we have another Alaska Embraer E175 in the Retro Horizon throwback livery. This guy is going to be making the flight down to Seattle today, operated by SkyWest. And beside him, over at Terminal 2, we have our Iceland Air 737 MAX 8. This guy is going to be operating up to Reykjavik today. Beside him, we have our United 737 MAX 9. This guy is going to be operating over to Washington Dulles today. Beside him, we have the Together United 737 MAX 8. This guy is going to be operating down to Houston today. And beside him, we've got our United 737-800. This guy's going to be operating over to Denver today. Beside both of those guys, we have our monster Korean Pepsi 777-300ER. This guy is going to be operating to Seoul, South Korea. Previously, this was a 777-300ER route. At the moment, it's currently operated by a 787-10, and we might see it go back to a 787-9 or 777-300ER, but for a really long time we had the 777-300ER, even in 2024. So hopefully we'll see a 777-300ER come back, but I wanted to include this model because I really like the Korean Air Pepsi livery. Beside those guys, we've got two other aircraft. We have a United Friendship A320. This guy's just heading over to Chicago O'Hare. And in front of him, we have another Air Canada toothpaste model, the Air Canada Toothpaste A320. And this guy's going to be heading over to Las Vegas. Beside our Korean 777-300ER, we have the new livery Qantas 787-9. This guy's got his flaps down, and he's just arrived from Sydney and is going to be heading back out there later today. Beside him, we have an Aeromexico 737 MAX 8. This guy's just arrived from Mexico City and is going to be heading out there tomorrow morning. Beside him, we have an Aeromexico 737-800 in the new Aeromexico livery. This guy is going to be heading out to Mexico City right now. And across from him, we have a Delta 737-900. This guy's going to be operating to Minneapolis-St. Paul. Currently, this route is done by an A320, but we see the 737-900 here sometimes. A much more frequent Delta visitor is our Delta E175. This guy's going to be operating down to Seattle. Finishing up the SkyTeam section here, we have the Xiamen Airlines 787-9, and he is going to be headed over to Xiamen, China today. We have a Delta 757-200 on a sports charter. He's going to be pulling over to the stand. And in front of the Xiamen 787-9, we have an American 800. This guy's just arrived from Dallas-Fort Worth. This route is also run interchangeably on an A321. Beside him, we have a British Airways 777-200. This guy is going to be headed over to London Heathrow. Beside him, we have an Air New Zealand 787-900. That's a much better view of that Air New Zealand All Blacks 787-9 going to Auckland. And we have a better view of that British Airways 777-200 going to London. You can actually tell this is in the older Panda Eyes livery. Love the old British Airways livery. In fact, some of them aren't entirely updated. They just have some minor paint changes. We see them every so often. Here's another 777-200 LR. This is the Air Canada 777-200 LR. This guy is going to be headed over to Sydney later. Across from him, we have an Air Canada 777-300ER. This guy has just arrived from London Heathrow. Beside him, we have another 777-300ER. This is the Philippine 777-300ER, and it has just arrived from Manila. Beside him, we have a Lufthansa 747-400. This has just arrived from Frankfurt. On the other side of him, we have a Turkish Airways 777-300ER in the FIFA livery. This guy has just arrived from Istanbul and is going to be heading back out there later today. And we have another Air Canada 777-200LR in the new livery, and he's going to be headed over to Toronto, but arrived from Sydney yesterday, which is why he's parked at the international terminal. And that just about does it, folks. That is the entire airport update for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please let me know if you have any questions below. I'm really excited to do a much more in-depth update in the future. And we'll probably be doing a nighttime update pretty soon. I'll show you something cool here before I let you go. While today's update has been sort of a daytime, pretty sunny update, we also have lighting on the airport. So I'm excited to hopefully get a nighttime update out at some point in the future. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now. I would just like to take a minute to thank everyone who's helped me make this update a reality, and I look forward to any questions questions, comments, or concerns below. They are really what helps us make this airport even better. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye for now.